Hi, my name is Sara Oehler, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for Soflex Company. And today I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the 4 diameters of beading wire that we offer across our various brands of beading wire. The first one is our very fine 0.010 inch diameter. This particular diameter is going to be for sewing, crocheting, knitting, and bead weaving. So it's very thin. It will actually work really well with things like diamonds and sapphires that have such small holes that you can't fit them on a thicker diameter. The next diameter is our fine 0.014. This diameter is going to be for pearls and seed beads and really light weaving projects. So for example, when I do my Russian spiral bracelets, I use the 0.014 diameter beading wire. And the medium, which is our 0.019 inch, is the most commonly used diameter. And that's because it can fit some pretty small holes, but it can handle things that are more abrasive too. So when you mix and match a lot of different materials, which most people do, the 0.019 usually will be a good all-around fit because it can do a little bit of both. It'll fit 85% of freshwater pearls, it'll fit some small gemstones even if they're drilled properly, but it can handle things that are more abrasive as well, like metals and glass and crystal. And finally we have our 0.024, which we call our heavy. And that's a great diameter for things like the bracelet that I have on today. Big heavy-duty gemstones, African trade beads, anything that's large, heavy, or abrasive. Especially bracelets, they get a lot of wear and tear as the bracelet rolls up and down your arm, and so it's important to use the thickest diameter possible. And that's really true in any design that you make. The best rule of thumb is to use the thickest diameter that you can to make sure that your jewelry design is going to have longevity. Our different wires come in different constructions, 7 strand, 21 strand, 49 strand, but really the best rule of thumb with Soflex products is just go as thick as you possibly can. Don't worry about all the little numbers and things, because that's what makes it all so confusing. Just go thicker is better when it comes with Soflex. So the thicker you can go, the better off your design is going to be. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the various brands that we offer in beading wire. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is our original Soflex beading wire. It's been on the market for about 25 to 30 years. It's well known worldwide as the best quality beading wire, and part of that is the materials that we use to manufacture our beading wire. We use a high quality marine quality stainless steel, and then we use a premium nylon coating. There's lots of different types of steel and nylon out there that you can use, so the ones that we've chosen are really good quality, European grade quality. And furthermore, we use a proprietary braid that is specific to us in all of our different diameters that we offer. Soflex comes in 3 diameters. It comes in our fine, our medium, and our heavy, and it comes in a huge array of colors. When I say huge array, I mean huge. There's 1 stack, 2 stacks, and 3 stacks. So there's a lot of different colors, especially in our 0.019 medium diameter. The next type of beading wire that we offer is our Metallics brand, and that comes in just our copper color and our antique brass. It's just like our Soflex. It has a stainless steel core, and it just has a color nylon coating that is the color of brass and copper, and it got its own special label because these 2 colors are so popular. We wanted them to really stand out to folks. The next type of beading wire that I want to talk about is our soft touch beading wire. It's 50% softer and more flexible than our original Soflex. So it goes through a secondary process after it's created to really, really relax the weave of the braid, and it's very soft, very supple, and drapes a lot like a thread. So if you really care about that drapeability, then this is definitely the product for you. The next product I have here is our Extreme Flex Wire. It comes in 3 different colors. It has a 24 karat gold, a champagne, and a 925 sterling silver. And this is the only one that doesn't have a stainless steel core. It's actually a copper alloy core, and it is braided a little bit differently because it's a 1x19 strand product. Those strands are plated in true 24 karat and true sterling silver, and then it's coated in a clear nylon coating. The champagne is actually the true color of that copper alloy. So it's some beautiful, gorgeous colors. Does tend to run more expensive because it has these precious metals in it. But what's really nice about this particular product is that nylon coating makes it hypoallergenic and non-tarnishing. So if you use it in a project like this one, it's going to look a lot like a beautiful 24 karat chain. But you're not going to have to worry about any metal allergies, and you don't have to worry about it changing colors. So I often expose it in my designs like this, and it's quite beautiful. Next, we have our Econoflex. Econoflex is a craft wire, so it's going to be for a project that's more crafty, like maybe a napkin ring holder. I've also seen people do beaded curtains with it because you need a lot of wire and you want it to be real affordable. Econoflex is the only product that and Pro Econoflex that are made overseas in China. The rest of these beading wires are made in the USA. So this particular one is a lower end product. It's 7 strands, but we still maintain as best quality as we can for the price point. It's a very low price point. Pro Econoflex is our brand new product, and it kind of comes out in between the Econoflex and the Soft Flex. For drapeability and flexibility. It's less flexible than Soft Flex. It is definitely more for a hobbyist, not for a real designer that's, you know, selling their work or really cares about that flexibility. But what's nice about it is it comes in an 014 49 strand. It's the only product that we carry that does have a 49 strand in the 0.014 inch diameter. And it also comes in a really pretty gold color, and then that regular satin silver steel tone. And that's really nice too. If you can't afford the 24 karat, but you do want a gold color, then this might be the product for you in your design work. So that's kind of a rundown of our various diameters of beading wire. And then I just wanted to quickly go over the label so we could talk a little bit about how you choose your beading wire. So for example, when you look at our label, at the top you're going to see the color name. Over here you're going to see what that brand is. So like Soft Flex is our original flex wire. Soft Touch is our premium flex wire, so you'll see some information there. This is what I like to look at when I'm choosing my diameter. Rather than trying to remember 0.010, 0.014, 0.019, whatever it is, you can just look at this and know what you're getting. There's a very fine, a medium, and a heavy. So this makes it pretty easy. And when you look right under that, you'll see the usage of that diameter. So for example, this is medium, and it's for all-purpose glass, mineral, and metal beads. Over here, you'll find any specialty information. Soft Flex is a knot-tying stainless steel nylon-coated wire, so it gives you that information there. Here's the test strength. On a medium Soft Flex, it's 26 pounds. This isn't entirely useful for beading, but some people do like to pay attention to that number, so we do keep it on our label. But as I understand it, that's a 26-pound fish rushing down river that would actually snap this wire. So this is a very strong, very durable wire. Here we have the thickness, and we list it both in inches and in millimeters. We have the length of the spool, so this is a 30-foot or 9 meters. And then we have the wire construction, which is a 49 strand. At the very bottom, you'll find just some information about our company. We're located in Sonoma, California. Our website is softflexcompany.com, and our products are, for the most part, made in the USA. If they aren't, they'll be marked with the country of origin in that same spot. So that kind of gives you a brief rundown of our different brands of beading wire, and then how to look at the label to choose the right product for you, whether it's the diameter, the length, or the brand. Today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple bracelet using Softflex beading wire. Normally I would use a medium diameter or heavy diameter for a bracelet. Bracelets get a lot of wear and tear as they roll up and down your arm. The beads will spin and cut into the wire. So it's important to use a thicker diameter of beading wire. In this case, I did choose the medium, even though I do have some abrasive materials on the bracelet. I really wanted to use the purple color of beading wire underneath these amethyst beads. Just like when you buy a strand of amethyst, they're strung on a purple thread. It'll bring out the color of the bead and just brighten it a little bit. So I am going to go with the medium in this case, so I can use purple. Purple doesn't come in heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the clip and unstring some wire right off my spool. I oftentimes will bead right onto the spool, as that's a nice way to save some wire by not having to cut off a lot of extra. I'm going to string my first crimp tube, and that's a 2x2 millimeter crimp tube with the Softflex medium. And then I'll go ahead and string my design. I already sort of put a design together here using some amethyst beads and some Venetian glass beads. And I actually left this to string on camera for a reason. For anybody out there who has never beaded before, I wanted you to see how quick and easy it is to make a bracelet from start to finish. You know, there is a little bit more time in the creativity aspect of deciding which beads you're going to put together and in which, which design. But, you know, really, once you have that down, the putting together part is really pretty quick and easy and simple. And that's one of my favorite parts about beading. I am a busy mom of 2 that are 2 and under. So I don't have a lot of extra time to do art that isn't kid-friendly. But I do have time to do beading. Even though this is actually my job, I do bead as a hobby as well. And I often make gifts for friends and family members and submit my designs to magazines, and I'm even writing a book in my own personal time. So the reason I can do that is because beading is such a great hobby for getting something done real quickly. And also really affordable. You know, a lot of hobbies, you have a big startup cost and a lot of tools and materials, but with beading, really, you just need a few basic things to get started. Clasps or ear wires, crimps, crimp covers, some beads, some beading wire, and, you know, a couple of tools, but not a lot of stuff to get started. Okay, so now that I've got my full design strung, I'm going to go ahead and put on my second crimp tube. And again, I'm using a 2x2 crimp tube. This is a Softflex crimp tube, which means that it's a little thicker and stronger than some that are out there. It's also seamless. It's one solid tube. It is important to always use good quality crimps. Even though they're tiny, they are mighty. They hold much of the design together. So you want to make sure that you're using a good quality product. Okay, so I've got my crimp. I went through half my clasp. Now I'm going to string back into my crimp, and I'm just going to gently pull it down. You want to leave enough space where this attaches that the clasp can actually move around and have a little bit of flexibility. I'm going to straighten out the wires inside the crimp tube to the best of my ability, not because it's going to hold better, but because this will give me a nice, straight, clean connection to my clasp. The crimping pliers have two holes. The back hole, or this hole on the right side, has a tooth. The front hole, or the hole on the left side, is completely round. I'm going to use the tooth first to just gently compress a divot into my crimp tube. And then what I'll do is turn that on its side into the rounder, and I will gently compress again. And then I like to go around it about 5 or 6 times, just gently compressing and turning, compressing and turning. And what that does is it cinches that metal down into our nylon coating and just gives you a nice, strong, sturdy hold. It also makes sure it's all nice and round. You know, I see a lot of crimp tubes that will be sort of half rounded, and it's really about getting around the whole thing and sort of tightening it down. You don't need to use a lot of force. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see customers make or beaders make, is because it makes sense to us when we want something to be really tight, like think of a jar. We're going to really tighten it down, you know, using a lot of force. In this case, we're working with a really soft metal. So when you try to use the crimping pliers with too much force, you're actually going to be kind of tearing down that thin wall of metal. So you want to use just gentle compressions and think about it as molding the crimp rather than, you know, tightening it. I'm going to take my cutters and I'll just slide right in next to the crimp, trim that excess wire, and then I can push my beads down from my spool all the way down through my bracelet, and now I can go ahead and clip off of my spool. This is a really nice way to make sure that you don't use or lose any excess wire, because then you end up just having to really trim an excess amount from one side of the design. So now I have my crimp on here already, so I just need to pass through my clasp and back into my crimp. And again, I want to kind of pull that down so that it looks similar to the other side. It's not quite there. You also want to leave a little bit of room between your last bead and the crimp. And by a little bit of room, I mean, you know, a couple millimeters, not a lot of space, but a little bit of space will give the design some flexibility. You also have to consider, if you're going to add crimp covers, which I am, that those are going to take up some room too on either side of the crimp. So I want to make sure I leave enough space that I'm not going to add those crimp covers and then all of a sudden it's going to be super tight. So you want your design to feel flexible. You know, the idea of Softflex is that it's strong, it's stainless steel, but it's also very flexible like a thread or cord. Okay, so I think that's enough room, and comparing these two sides, I feel confident that each connector looks similar. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp this. Again, I want my wires to be just about side by side if I can. And I'm going to compress and turn and compress again with my rounder. And I'll just go around it a few times, tightening it all down. When I feel good about that, I can go ahead and cut off my extra wire, and then we'll just add some crimp covers here at the end. So a crimp cover is this guy here. It's basically like an open-faced bead. and it'll slide over the top of my crimp tube, and then I'll close it down and it'll look like a little metal bead on the end. So lots of people use different types of tools to apply their crimp covers. I prefer a chain nose plier. I know lots of people that use the rounder in their crimping pliers, so you can give both of those a try. I like to hold the crimp tube facing into my hand, and then I grab on with my chain nose pliers. And I find that this is an easy way for me to have good control over that crimp cover. Now I know this is the front of my design, you know, the front of my clasp, so I'm going to actually slide the crimp cover over so that the back is going to be on the back side of the clasp. I closed it down, but I want to actually tuck in the two ends, and that'll keep it from slipping or sliding around. This is less important in a design like this than it is if there's free-floating wire that it can slip up and over the crimp tube, but I still like to do it. Maybe it's just one of those habits. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to take my crimp cover and slide it over the top of my crimp tube. I am using a 3mm crimp cover with a 2x2mm crimp tube, and that's how you sort of figure out your crimp cover. It's always going to be one size bigger than your crimp tube. So if you're using a 3x3mm crimp tube, you're going to use a 4mm crimp cover. And I'm using 2x2s today, so I'm going to use a 3mm crimp cover. And I'm just going to fold that in. It's nice and tight. And then I have my basic bracelet. Now by all means you could use our basic satin silver to make a design like this, or you can use any of our fun colors. We've got golds and silvers and purples and reds, and you know, change out the beads to whatever you desire in the class, but it's the basic this is the basic tutorial for how to make a bracelet using Softflex beading wire. I'm going to show you how to make a simple necklace just using a few beads in the center and then letting the colored Softflex be a part of the design rather than just a stringing supply. So I've already cut a piece of wire to start working, and what I did was I clipped a bead stopper on it. The bead stoppers are basically like big springs that just slip open, and you can find those in many different colors, colored tips. So I've got my bead stopper set. I'm going to go ahead and string one crimp tube. I'm using 2x2mm crimp tubes today, and they're the Softflex crimp tubes, so they're very strong, sturdy. I'm going to string my beads. I just have a few specialty beads picked out here. This is a great design for using up if you just have like a couple special beads, or you have a couple leftover beads that you just can't really use in any other design. This is a great way to use those. So I'm stringing all of my beads down to the center of the wire, and then I'm going to string one more crimp tube onto the center. In this design, we're actually going to use the magical crimpers. The nice thing about the magical crimpers is it takes out having to use a crimp cover. And the reason being is it's going to take this little crimp tube and make it round, but also crimp it at the same time. These crimping pliers have two identical half domes on either side of the plier. The crimp tube actually fits in the center of the pliers just perfectly. These only work with a 2x2mm crimp tube. According to the inventor of the magical crimpers, if you're using the universal yellow handled pair, it should work with 014, 019, or 024. However, you do have to usually have two strands running through the crimp for it to really be secure. So since I'm doing a one strand design here, what I do is I just cut off a little extra wire and string it through my crimp tube. And then I can go ahead and use those magical crimpers on this design, and I'll just trim off the excess wire. So I have everything all set up here. I'm going to go ahead and center that crimp tube inside these pliers and pull next to my bead. And what happens when I do my first pass with the pliers is it pinches 4 little corners, which make it look sort of like a little ravioli. Then I'm going to put that crimp into the crimping pliers the opposite direction and pinch those 4 corners in. And then I like to go around it several times. The inventor suggests at least 6 times. You just kind of keep turning and compressing. And what that does is it just makes sure that the 2 edges of that crimp are completely molded down into the nylon coating of the wire. And now all I need to do on this side is cut off my extra wire. So I slide in my flush cutter as close as possible between the 2 wires and snip. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. In as close as possible and snip, and then no one will ever know that there was a second wire running through there. But that makes it a lot easier and a lot more secure. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'll get a little bit of a bigger piece of wire just to make it easier on myself. I could totally use these little trimmed pieces here, but since I'm doing a video, I think I better go the safe route here. I'm going to string my wire inside and pull it sort of centered so I've got a little bit of wire on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and grab the crimp inside of the pliers and then pull down so that it's next to my bead, and then I'll crimp. And I'm going to go around it on all sides, making sure it's all nice and tight. And when I'm done with that, I can go ahead and snip, snip. On both ends. And we've got the center of our necklace. Now all we need to do is attach the clasp on the back end, and that's going to be real quick and easy. I am just going to string a crimp tube, again the 2x2s. I'll go through half of my clasp and back into the crimp tube again and pull it down so it's fairly tight. Again, I want this to be able to move around, and I'm going to go ahead and use those same pliers. You can even use them to connect your clasps. And in fact, it's a very strong connection. You have to worry about it breaking. Once I'm done there, all I have to do is clip off that extra wire, and we'll do it on one more side and we'll be done with our necklace. So in order to make sure that I have the same length on both sides, I like to pull from the middle. So I'll find the middle and then I'll pull up, and then I can kind of keep track of where that crimp needs to go, and I can just sort of let go of this side here. I'm going to string into my crimp tube, or into my clasp, and then back into my crimp tube, and pull that down to the right place. I like to check both sides and make sure that they look similar, and they do. And then I can go ahead and crimp. So this is a real quick and easy way to make a real simple design, but something that can look really elegant, especially if you're using our 24 karat gold or sterling silver or champagne colors. You can make something that just looks really amazing with a small budget, because you don't need a lot of beads, and it feels really nice because the wire is actually hypoallergenic because it's nylon coated, and it feels nice on your skin. It's smooth and soft and very comfortable to wear. And again, you can use, whatever beads you have around your house. Maybe you have a really neat glass pendant and you haven't been sure how to use it. Just throw a couple beads on either side of it, crimp it in the center of the wire, and let the wire just be a part of the design, by using a color that makes sense for that particular design. Just to give you a quick comparison, this is the bracelet that I did earlier using a 2x2 millimeter crimp and a 3 millimeter crimp cover, and this is the necklace done with the 2x2 millimeter crimp using a magical crimper. So there are times where I still use crimp covers. In fact, I really like them in a design like this on a bracelet, where I think it looks nice to have a bigger bead at the end there. But there are plenty of times where I also just like to use the magical crimpers and think that they do a really nice job as well. So both knowing how to do both is very useful. Now I'm going to show you some varying designs that you may not think of normally when you think of beading wire, but they're things that you can make with Softflex beading wire. For example, with our very fine, which is our thinnest diameter in Soft Touch, you can make something like this, which is a star. It's a bead weaving pattern. When you go into a thicker diameter like the fine, you can make something like this, where you're actually doing some really fine bead weaving. It does work best in a spiral pattern. This is a Russian spiral. It's not going to work nearly as well for like a peyote design, but it works really great for this particular stitch. Another great 014 design is this guy here, which is just some really tiny seed pearls. Those are going to have really small holes, so that's great for 014. And finally, one last design. And this one here has really tiny gemstones, and so it does need the really fine wire, or just plain fine wire, in order to make it. This is a cool design because it's actually 3 clasps, and as you unhook the clasps from the charm, you can have fewer and fewer strands, or you can add them back in if you want more strands. So that's some of our fine. Most of my work is done on our Softflex medium in lots of different colors. Medium is the most versatile diameter, so it is great for working with lots of different materials, but it also comes in our biggest color selection. So if you're making something like this, where you're exposing the color in the design as part of the design, medium's usually the one that you're going to go for. This is really a beautiful necklace. It was in Bead Style magazine, and these are just basically jump rings made out of Softflex using crimps and crimp covers. Let me find a couple more designs using the 019 to show you. Here's another great one. This is just braided Softflex in the 019, and it exposes the wire, but it almost looks like a chain. It works really well with this vintage component, and it is in our antique brass color. That matches their components really well. And here's another great one in our medium. This is actually done on a Kumi Hemo board, believe it or not. Again, using our Softflex, this time in our Extreme brand, which is this purple label, and in the champagne color. So this is actually a braid done on the Kumihimo disc, and then I added the beads in the center and braided the rest down the center. When you do something like this with multiple strands, you just use a bigger crimp, like a 3x3 crimp, with a pair of mighty crimping pliers. And let's see, how about this guy? Here's the medium, and that's just rings made out of the Softflex and then woven together to make this design. This is in the book that I co-authored with Jamie Hogsett, Show Your Colors. And it has lots of great ideas for how you can use the colored beading wire as part of your design, which is really, really, really fun and easy and nice. So last of all, we have our 024 Heavy, which is going to be for things that are going to have a lot of wear and tear. For example, I'm taking off the bracelet I've been wearing because it's a great 024 example. The reason being is these big crystals are very abrasive, and then I have metal beads in the middle. So as this rolls up and down my arm, it is going to get a lot of wear and tear and damage. So I'm going to use the heaviest diameter on that. I also like to use it for some of the braided designs that you've seen. It's great for eyeglass holders, things that are going to get a lot of heavy abuse. And here's another 024 example done on the Kumihimo board using these square seed beads. And again, that is done with Softflex beading wire. So thank you for joining me today to talk a little bit about Softflex beading wire. We talked about the different diameters, we talked about the different brands, we put together a basic bracelet using regular crimping pliers, and a necklace using magical crimping pliers, and then we went through some different styles of jewelry that you can do with Softflex that you may not automatically think of when you think of Softflex. Softflex is a great product for stringing your jewelry designs, but it can be used in lots of other ways, whether you braid it, use it on a Kumihimo disc, use it on a loom as your warp threads. You can really let your imagination run wild once you start thinking about it as a supply that can be part of the design rather than just something that's hidden underneath the beads. So if you'd like to learn more, we have lots of free project ideas on our website, and by all means, please do buy your wire at your local bead store. Supporting your local bead store is more important than ever these days, and we want to see all of those stores do well. So please do support them any chance that you get. Thank you.